welcome to a special pre-signing day edition of Commitment Issues, the number one recruiting podcast in South Korea this week for sure. I mean, we've eclipsed the giant competition that we face out there in that market. We're hoping to conquer the United States next. Anyway, I'm Rob Cassidy. I cover the Southeast for Rivals.com, and I'm joined by my co-host, Woody Womack, who also covers the Southeast for Rivals.com. How are you, Woody?
Oh, yeah, I'm great. Big shout to all our international listeners. I'm not sure who's listening in Korea, but we had several Korean listeners this week, so I hope you're paying attention because we got a big signing day coming, Rob. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. You're excited. The people in Korea are also very excited, so let's address them without further ado.
All right, listen, Rob, before we get into heavy recruiting talk, we've got to talk, of course, about Ole Miss and how outraged we are at their recruiting violations, especially those related to the women's basketball team.
Yeah, I can't believe that the Ole Miss football team would have the nerve to let the women cheat the way that they did. Hugh Freeze failed to monitor the women's basketball team, and that's a problem for me.
In all fairness, for those of you who don't know, bringing you quickly up to date, Yahoo's own Pat Forty came out with a lengthy story late last week detailing some allegations against Ole Miss coming from the NCAA. A few of them were related to football. It seemed like at the time it looked like it might be a bombshell. As things went along, though, it appears that it's really not going to have a major impact. All secondary violations, and doesn't seem to be having an impact on recruiting at all. What's your kind of feel with how the recruits have taken the news, especially with the way it hit initially?
I think they've kind of blown it off. I mean, look, man, this affected other fans of other SEC teams more than anything. The way Hugh Freeze has been recruiting there and how well he's done, other fan bases want nothing more. Since they've been accusing them of cheating anyway, they want nothing more than for something to come out that kind of confirms what they've been saying. So when this happened for like an hour in the middle of the afternoon, there was like this quick uproar on Twitter and, all across, the Rivals.com message boards of, knew this. I mean, who's surprised by this? And then, it comes to find out it's really nothing. And so they had to kind of walk it back a little bit, even though they didn't walk it back. But, maybe they should have. Hasn't really affected Ole Miss. It looks like Ole Miss might be able to pull off something that maybe they have not pulled off in the Rivals era. I'd have to look it up. And that is to land all of the top five prospects in its own state. They've already got commitments from DeKalen Metcalf. They've got a commitment from Benito Jones. Nigel Knott is on the board for them. Simmons is on the board for them, the 5-star, and A.J. Brown, the wide receiver at Starkville, is also on the board for them. And it is not a stretch to think that they may land all of them. Now, Knott may commit by the time this podcast airs. If that happens, and I'm talking about him like he's uncommitted, you know why. It's because we recorded this before it happened. What's your take on this, Woody?
Well, it's interesting. We were on the Rebel Grove podcast. I think each of us spent some time on there last week, and we talked a lot about A.J. Brown, what he's going to do. He's not a guy we know tremendously well. I think we both got to spend some time with him when we were out there in Hattiesburg. I don't really have a clear read on what he's going to do. I think he's having a big signing announcement at his school, which I still think would be a major troll move to have that and commit to Ole Miss, especially because he's from Starkville, like you said. But what a year for talent in Mississippi. We got a chance to go out there and see a lot of the guys. Raekwon Davis, one of the most physically impressive prospects I've seen in the class. He's not bound for Ole Miss.
Outside the top five. Crazy, right? Yeah, number 6.
Yeah, he's not even in the top 5 prospects, and we're talking about a guy that's the size of a house. I mean, he's a monster. Even our producer, Nick Kruger, had to use 2 hands to hold the camera up to try to get that tight shot of his face because he was so much taller than Nick, who is listed at about 6 foot, maybe 6'1" on the old roster. So, it's just a crazy year, and Ole Miss gets attention for going out of state, getting guys, like Robert Kimdichie, who they took out of Georgia. Laquan Treadwell is from Illinois, but I mean, that state produces talent. I think a lot of those guys are getting seen a lot more. As you mentioned, you've got a 5-star in Simmons. Nigel Knott was in the 5-star conversation, as was Metcalf. A.J. Brown is a guy that steadily rose in the rankings. So, even if they finish with 4 or 5, it's a huge year.
Especially when you're in Mississippi, another problem you face, especially in this era anyway, is fending off Alabama, who is coming off a national title victory. They're in on Knott. They were in on Brown. So fighting them off is not easy. if you're trying to lock down your borders as Ole Miss is, not to mention Mississippi State, who's also an SEC school in the state. So to be able to land all 5 of those, if that happens, is just not something that we should sell short, and I don't think anybody will.
Well, so, getting back to the sanctions, it doesn't look like it's a major issue. I know we've heard rumors on other message boards through other channels. There might be more coming. Personally, I just don't see it. I know the Laramie Tunsil situation with him and his stepdad and his mom led to all kinds of stuff, but I think when it comes down to it, that's going to be a non-factor. So we can kill that. We're quashing that story from further conversation, at least on this pod. But Rob, big news today. I saw your Twitter blowing up. Riley Cole, a 3-star linebacker, had been committed to Alabama for a long time. Kind of surprised people when he did commit because the Tide were slow to offer, as were a bunch of schools. Now it's, 4 days until signing day, and they asked him to gray shirt. So how did you take that news in? What was the reaction? I heard your Twitter feed, your mentions were really blowing up with fans of other fan bases calling you out as well.
Yeah, surprisingly, it wasn't Alabama fans that were upset about me writing the story of what happened. It was Auburn fans and Michigan fans that were upset that I wasn't upset enough, which is crazy enough. So I don't know, if they thought if you listen to this podcast at all, you know that I went to great lengths defending Jim Harbaugh for what he did when it came to parting ways with the prospect. But Michigan fans are so mad about that they're just yelling at any reporter they can find. So, they decided that I crucified Jim Harbaugh, which never happened, and then yelled at me, proceeded to call me names about not crucifying Nick Saban. I actually think what Saban did might have been a little bit, I don't want to say worse because, you reserve the right to do this. Everybody knows the stakes in recruiting. Is it ideal to tell a high school prospect, hey, we're going to need you to gray shirt 3 days before signing day? No, it's not. But you can read the writing on the wall most of the time and have a backup option. So it's not like I feel that bad for Riley here. It's not an ideal situation. He's a fine football player that will find somewhere to land, obviously. But I'm not one to jump up and down and vilify anybody, not Harbaugh, not Saban, in either of these two situations. I don't think it's ideal. I think that an early signing day could solve that issue. But, who am I to – my life isn't dependent on signing a class that's going to win football games. It's really easy to sit back when your job isn't tied to this and judge people. It's a little bit different when you can get fired for not executing this plan very well or putting together a good team. And if your livelihood rests on it, maybe you'll do some things that it's easy to chastise when you're pulled back from the situation,
Well, yeah, I really think it stinks. You make some good points, but it really stinks for our boy Riley, who was one of my personal favorites at events over the years. I think he's going to be a very good football player. I'm not sure what the early scuttlebutt is on him and where he might land, but I'd have to imagine that schools are going to make a spot for a guy like him. I could see maybe South Carolina or somebody like that swooping in, or maybe even Georgia, especially if things don't break their way down the stretch. But just kind of a crappy situation, especially for the kid who, grew up in Alabama, probably dreamed of playing for Alabama. So
yeah, he'd been committed there since June. That's what makes it even worse is, he'd been committed there. He's one of those few guys that didn't really look around and kind of stuck, pretty loyal, and then ended up getting, elbow dropped for it, which is too bad to see.
Right, earn the offer in camp and everything. So the question is now, immediate speculation for Alabama fans went to, okay, look, when we gave the boot to Riley, who are we replacing him with? It seems like they're in the mix for 3 5-star linebackers in Mike Juarez from California, Mac Wilson, who's an in-state 5-star guy, and then Ben Davis, who was actually at Auburn this past weekend. Does this mean that they're getting all 3? Is that the sign? We've assumed they were getting Davis and Wilson, but you think this is the key, that they're going to get the trio?
I think it might be. I think they must feel pretty good about it because they knew, if we knew, they knew that they were getting Wilson and Davis, and they've known that for at least a month. So it's not like anything would have changed in the last week to affect Riley, right? So it's not like they would have been like, oh, we forgot, we got to get rid of a dude. I can't imagine that they're that inept in that office. So something changed, right? And I think the most obvious thing, if we're going to jump to some conclusions, would be Mike Juarez, right? That's got to be it. I don't necessarily going to stand on the table and say it's a done deal, but I think it's a pretty good indicator that Nick Saban and that staff feels pretty good about where they sit there, unless there's some mystery linebacker on the table that we don't know about.
All right, so yeah, I'm with you. I think probably Juarez is the guy. So we all wish Riley well. Hope he lands on his feet. But Riley was a 3-star. Actually, I think he was a 3-star. We had dropped into a 2-star after he'd kind of fallen off the recruiting radar. Then he played his way back up to a 3. But we've seen a handful of kids, Rob, this year who are 3-stars with not a lot of options, who kind of overplayed their hand here, waiting too long to announce. A lot of people don't realize that those offers can go away late, especially if you don't jump in and hold your spot in a class. So what's been your experience with some of these guys who might have overplayed their hand, and do you see some guys being on signing day without letters of intent to sign?
That always happens. I don't know who that will be this year. I think that there are some guys that definitely hurt themselves. As my boy DJ Khaled would say, you played yourself. And Keyshawn Young was one of them that almost did it. I think that he really wanted to go to Michigan. He would plan on committing to Michigan. He did not commit to Michigan the several times he had the opportunity to do it, and was so hard set on announcing on signing day that all of a sudden Michigan takes Eddie McDoom and fills up at wide receiver, and all of a sudden there's no room there, and he has to scramble. It looked like he might go to Louisville. Last second, he visits USC to try to maybe get a spot in that class, and I think that's who he'll eventually select. But he'll announce between USC and Louisville. But I think that if we wanted to go to Michigan, and I think that opportunity was taken away from him simply because he waited too long. I think that happens a lot more than people realize. I know it's happened to players in your region this year and in years past. It's something that happens every year. Where guys just think that these schools are going to wait on them, and then finally the schools shrug their shoulders and are like, fine, we'll fill your spot, and they go for it.
Yeah, we've heard from a lot of guys who are, who have done it in the past, and they end up, you see a 3-star guy or, even maybe a 4-star guy who ends up, going outside of a Power 5 school, and that's usually the reason why. They didn't jump on the opportunity. Coaches sometimes, would rather take a sure thing. Of course, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And in the situation, like you said, of our boy Pye, who will be a very good college football player, he maybe didn't end up going to his first choice because he kind of waited and delayed. So kind of keep an eye out for that on signing day, everyone out there in podcast land, because I think we're going to see some guys fall through the cracks, and it could benefit some of these smaller schools looking to land some guys. So one guy who does have a spot, that's signing day and beyond, 5-star Demetris Robertson, becoming our weekly topic now, Rob. Seems like every week we're talking about this.
So where do we start? It was Sam Bruce it was Jacob Eason at first, and then it became Sam Bruce, and now it's become D-Rob, right? These have been like the commitment issues poster boys. Yeah,
we also had Mecole Hardman was featured 3 or 4 weeks during his dramatic play. So now it's Demetrius, and I think we're going to keep talking about him every week. The Notre Dame fans gave us a lot of love after not giving us love the week prior, which
yeah, we got in trouble for pointing out that they were not giving us love.
So Demetrius this weekend went to Georgia Tech for an official visit, which a lot of people are saying, what's going on? Why is a 5-star going to Georgia Tech for an official visit? His mom's been pushing for him to go there, at least for a trip. They go up there, have a good time. He was scheduled then to leave early, go to Alabama, and check out an official visit there. He was committed to Alabama at one point, of course. Instead, he ends up staying extra at Georgia Tech, misses the Alabama visit for the 3rd time in 3 weeks, which is pretty impressive. I mean, he had scheduled 2 other official visits, missed them both, and without really, a concrete reason. He had said there were some distractions, his family schedule didn't work out, but, we both know that if you really want to get to a place, you're going to probably get there. So the word is now that Alabama, is kind of moving on, at least in terms of, they want him on signing day. If he doesn't fax them the letter, they're not going to be in the race past signing day, which leaves Georgia Tech, Cal, who also got an official visit, Notre Dame, who's kind of the leader in the clubhouse, and then Georgia, which had an in-home visit, and they're hoping that he comes for an official visit next weekend. So, I mean, this is really setting up to be a crazy finish, and all of a sudden, when we get past signing day, I would expect kind of national attention to be on him. Do you see it a situation where all of a sudden he becomes kind of the center of the recruiting world as we look to wrap up 2016?
I think he has some potential to become that guy that everybody's waiting for, maybe even post signing day. I think ultimately he's going to pick the school with the nicest equipment truck. And Notre Dame's really really showed out in that category. But man, I would, if I had to guess, and I don't cover him as closely as you do because he's a Georgia guy, which makes him a Woody Womack guy, that he will end up at Notre Dame. That's my guess for now anyway. And you never know with him though. We do talk about him every week though. I guess you could say we've been drilling rather hard on him.
Well, so yeah, you mentioned Notre Dame. Notre Dame showed up at his house with an equipment truck, which kind of led to some of that early national media attention, which I saw one story where it was clear that
when you say national media attention, you mean like national media fist shaking, right? Like, I mean, it was.
Yeah, well, exactly. Not when I say national media, I mean people who work for bigger outlets than ourselves, at least non-recruiting entities, ESPN, CBS Sports, places of that nature. Although I would say, some of the people I saw shaking their fists have less followers than me on Twitter. So,
hey, and that's what we measure worth by in 2016, right?
That's right. That's what I've been told. At least it's like a resume. So, so anyway, they pull the equipment truck up to his house. And then they drive it to the school also and use it as kind of a tool. I mean, the equipment trucks look cool. Every school's got them. It's like a big semi-truck, with everything painted on it. It seemed to draw a lot of attention. I saw one article of it was clear another school was complaining, saying this should be a secondary violation. Notre Dame was defending themselves. Then I saw another article, derying the situation, saying, it's too much. And then that brings us to our girl Heather Dinich, who works for ESPN. I know I worked with her over times. Just a couple of her tweets. She said here, the recruiting has gotten out of hand because the coaches have allowed it to by trying to one-up one another. They've created a monster. Now, so let's break that tweet down first. That's sort of true, isn't it, Rob? I mean, don't you? We can take that.
I guess they've created a monster, but how does this affect Heather? Like, is this like keeping her up at night? I mean, I don't understand why she's mad about it, I guess, of all people. Why do old reporters, are the coaches knocking on her door with equipment trucks? I don't get why it's like offensive. You know what it is? It's recruiting is the Kardashians of the sports world. It's really easy to say something critical about recruiting and just have people agree with you. So it's like if you're on social media or whatever and you're looking for people to give you backpacks or be like, yeah, get them. You can just say, hey, isn't recruiting crazy? I mean, these kids are prima donnas. That's just, it's like taking shots at Kim Kardashian. Like, it's stupid, it's base, and people will just agree with you. And I think that's a lot of why people do it. And it's really weird to me because it's not as if Notre Dame driving an equipment truck into somebody's driveway is waking up Heather at her house wherever she lives. Like, I don't understand what's so offensive to these people about it.
First of all, we don't mean to single out Heather. Obviously, I think she's just one of many who takes this position. Second of all, that Kardashian analogy is one of the most profound things you've ever said on this podcast. So let's true. Let's hope they don't make us cut this segment. But like you said, the monster aspect it just depends on how offended you want to get by it. It's not, like you said, it's not hurting anyone. It is a big deal, but it's no different than free agency. I mean, it happens in the pros as well. These are kids. Kids like to have fun. I don't understand, like you said, it's not hurting anyone. That's not the bad part of recruiting is not, putting people's faces in Photoshops or pulling up trucks or coming up with hashtags, which brings us to the second point of Heather's tweet. She said, in reference to college coaches, they spend their time sitting around thinking of hashtags and gimmicks. You've got to be kidding me. Coach, win, educate. So,
look, I should take this time to say that I do enjoy Heather's work. I think she's a fine reporter. I wasn't trying to pile on her. We are just very different in these takes, I guess. I mean, I'm not searching to get mad at recruiting, and it might just be because, the avenues we work in, she doesn't work in recruiting. She's not around it as often as I am. So maybe it's just our different viewpoints. I just don't want anybody to think that I'm piling on her for no reason, because she is a good reporter and does some tremendous work.
Yeah, but the problem is, and much like, there's a lot of people who don't like the NFL draft who cover the NFL, and it's the same. It's sort of the same aspect. People love it, and that's why we have jobs. That's why we have the podcast. But, without recruiting, like you said, it's easy to criticize. You mentioned this in the Alabama segment. It's easy to criticize coaches for going over the top when you don't have to use teenagers to kind of rely on keeping your job. I mean, recruiting is what saves jobs. It's what makes coaches' careers. We've seen several coaches, even guys who have gotten in trouble, get a second chance because they can recruit. So I personally, I don't think it's getting any smaller. I don't think there will be an early signing day. And the reason why is because, the big schools don't want it. If Nick Saban and Urban Meyer wanted an early signing day, it would already exist. But they don't want it because their teams are playing late into the season, and they don't want to have to focus on recruiting midway through the year or even in the offseason. They want to come in, they want to steal guys late, they want to drop guys late, as we've seen, and I feel like it's not going to change anytime soon.
Look, man, if my next door neighbor is a big-time recruit, turns out to be a big-time recruit, and Notre Dame hauls a semi-truck up to his house and wakes me up at 5 in the morning, I'm going to have a problem. Other than that, I don't care what they do with their equipment truck. I have a real hard time mustering outrage about methods that people try to use to recruit. I just can't get upset about it, no matter how hard I try.
Well, guess what? And Nick and I, actually, before we got on this call, I was working on a story which will probably be up on the website by the time this comes out, the top 10 commitment reveal moments. I did something similar last year, and we were watching Omar Bolden make his commitment to Arizona State back in 2007, and it's the most ridiculous. I mean, Rob, you will love it so much because it's such a wrestling moment.
Hold on, what is it? I'm not familiar. This is before my time in the recruiting world.
Well, hopefully Nick can cut in the audio here in the place of me explaining to you what happened. But anyway, he takes the hats of the school he doesn't like and he throws them. He knocks them off the desk and then acts like he's gonna put on USC's hat and then throws it at the camera and then pulls an Arizona State hat from behind his back and puts it on.
So who's it gonna be?
Well, it's certainly not gonna be Oregon State or Washington. I think it might be. Nah, it ain't gonna be no Trojan. It ain't gonna be no Trojan. I'm gonna be Arizona State Sun Devil.
Yeah, man, we're not that far away from my dream of kids setting hats on fire of the schools they don't choose and blow torches. We're really not that far.
Well, so that was in 2007, and everyone says it gets worse every year. Personally, I think the kids, given the spotlight of social media, are more PC than they were at that time where, like you said, you'd have guys trashing hats and stuff like that. I don't see that as much. I also, speaking of our boy Miko Hardman, I heard he is doing his announcement with a cake, the exact idea we pitched on this show. So,
I'm hoping to get some royalties off that, man. Something.
So we are going to have to discuss that with him, and we're also going to have to reach out to the media outlets that ran that story and make sure they give us credit as well retroactively.
No doubt.
But anyway, Coach Wynn, educate. Take that under advisement going forward. So, Rob, last week, boy, the Tennessee fans, we've been waiting all year to talk about Tennessee because they have a rabid fan base. We go ahead and look at the analytics from the episode. They make up 25% of our audience last week. Can you believe that? The first time. And the Vols fans come through.
This podcast, huge in Knoxville and Korea. Those are the two things I know about this podcast, is that people in Knoxville love us and people in Korea also love us.
Well, so we had our biggest audience ever last week, thanks in part to Tennessee and a couple of fan bases that we've already talked about on this show. Notre Dame, Auburn also was big. Ole Miss, a lot of audience there. But we wanted to talk about Tennessee because they had a huge official visit weekend this last weekend. Butch Jones is known for closing strong late. We'll start with the Florida guys so you can kind of talk about them. Tyler Bird, a guy that has been really impressive from mine and Nick's old stomping grounds down in Southwest Florida. Actually covered his first high school game for Rivals.com during my first fall here. He's been committed to Miami forever. I mean, I think he was a Florida commit at one point, flipped to Miami at some point, but it's been years now that he's been committed there. It seems like Mark Richt made him a priority. He was one of the first recruiting stops, but he went up to Knoxville this weekend. What are you hearing in terms of what might happen with his recruitment?
Yeah, just a quick backstory on him. He's kind of the Larry Scott effect. The interim head coach at Miami, who's now at Tennessee, really helped recruit him. doesn't hurt that Tennessee also has a commitment from his high school teammate and Carlin Filsaime. There are a lot of factors working for Tennessee here. And, if I'm wagering a guess, I'm going to have a hard time seeing him sticking with Miami. I think there's just too much working for Tennessee. I'm hearing that things went well. Obviously, that's the recruiting cliche. Of course, things went well on every visit. But I'd be shocked. I think that maybe we'll see a flip from Bird. And the other guy is Zach Moss, who's currently committed to Utah, the running back, who was also once committed to Miami once upon a time. Committed to Utah now. He's got a couple high school teammates also committed to Utah. But if they've got room for him, I could see them taking Moss late too, and I think he'd be a nice little addition to Tennessee's class. So they could flip a couple guys from two schools outside of the conference here from Florida and really get some momentum. I think Tennessee's really been trying to break into Florida on some mentionable level anyway for some time, and maybe this Larry Scott hire is really going to help them get the momentum they've kind of been seeking in my neighborhood.
So I was talking to Paul Fortenberry, big shout, who works for VolQuest.com. Obviously,
also, maybe the best basketball player on the Rivals.com network, that guy. I mean, you want to talk about a dude that can hoop. I mean, he can go.
Yeah, no question. I would say in the Rivals.com network, he's number one. If it's a three-point shooting contest, maybe it's a discussion, but if it's pure athleticism, there's no doubt. As our producer Nick Kruger found out the hard way, Nick by far the best defender in the company, and even he had a hard time dealing with Paul with that length. Paul goes about 6'3", 6'4", real Kevin Durant type out on the floor.
He almost dunked too. I mean, the guy can jump.
Right, exactly. He's got a couple of kids now, so maybe maybe his game is slowing down. I know he was big at playing at like 5 a.m. every day and stuff like that, so I don't know if he's got time for that anymore. But getting back to the topic on Paul, he told me they've got 3 spots left, which is interesting because we just talked about 2 players from Florida, including Zach Moss, who is a 3-star. He would be a depth chart kind of guy. They need a running back in this class. The question is, do they have to make a decision? What if? Okay, Nigel Warrior, who's a Rivals 100 guy. I think we expect him to sign with Tennessee on Wednesday. He's son of Dale Carter, who's a Tennessee legend. He's been flirting with the Vols for a while. They've kind of backed off of several other safeties, and I think it's because they know they're getting Warrior. You talk about him and Bird. If they can get him in the same class, those are 2 instant impact guys in their secondary. And then they also had Derek Brown, 5-star defensive tackle on campus. I had been predicting Derek to go to Tennessee for a while, mainly because I expected this visit to kind of seal things up for him. It looks like the visit went well, but I think it's going to be Auburn there. I think I'm going to have to switch my pick, unfortunately.
Some shifts in your list.
My gut was telling me Tennessee all along, but it seems like his official visit to Auburn earlier this month seemed to have changed things. And just hard to see him kind of getting away from Auburn at this point. That's going to be a big loss for Georgia, missing out on him. Tennessee got into it late, almost pulled him out. And then Landon Dickerson, big-time offensive lineman, who we've heard talking to some other schools. But the question will be, does Moss take one of those spots? Do they have to pass on Dickerson because they're have
so
to
hard
get
up
Moss
at running
in?
back?
Yeah.
Positionally, this kind of stuff happens. It's real hard to, if you're not a coach or somebody following the positions, to understand why they would pass if they had to on Dickerson to take Moss. But if you're hard up in a certain position, you got to do what you got to do, and that might be the situation at Tennessee. If I had to predict, I'm fairly certain that they'll end with Warrior and Bird. What the last spot will be is interesting to me.
All right, so we'll see what happens. Moving on, we'll go quickly through these last few topics as we're running a little long. We're trying to make this a shorter show just because it's a signing day only event. Let's do a little promo. Rob, you and I will be featured along with Nick Kruger on camera. A little Commitment Issues live. I guess it's pseudo live signing day special. We're going to be on camera. Can you believe they're putting our faces on the front of Rivals.com?
Yeah, now instead of just making fun of our voices, people can also make fun of our appearances. So, I'm thrilled for that. But yeah, no, it should be good. I enjoy the show. I obviously enjoy doing the show. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. And to do more of it is good for me. And, it'll be fun. We'll have a little bit of fun. It'll be laid back. It won't be as intense and serious as some other signing day shows you may have seen around the internet and the television realm. It'll just be this show, except with our faces moving on the computer screen.
Yeah, well, so what we're going to be doing is a lot of quick hit videos, reactions to stuff that goes on during the day. We're going to have the other Rivals.com national analysts on, breaking down some of the commitments shortly after they happen. So
come for us and stay for Mike Farrell, right?
That's right. Anytime Mike's getting involved, he's going to bring a big audience. So, we hope that, especially our South Korean audience, we know we can count on them. We need the Americans to step up to the plate and come watch our videos. We'll be putting them all over the internet. You'll see them on social media, and they'll also be on the message board. So, Rob, quickly, Auburn. Now we talked a little bit about them when it comes to Derek Brown. I wanted to ask you one of your favorite terms. I saw tonight that Eli Stove, a Rivals 100 wide receiver, at least I think that's where he's ranked. Anyway, for a while it looked like he was headed to Florida. It looks like he reaffirmed his commitment tonight to Auburn, one of your favorite trends. Were you surprised that he didn't end up getting away to Florida? Because it seemed like everyone was predicting him there for a while.
No, I kind of thought he was going to stick. I think that people got a little bit carried away with that. For whatever reason, just because he had Florida with them for so long and because of the geographical location. But I never really got on board with that. Got reaffirmed. Every time you say it, I just cringe. You know who else reaffirmed tonight? Was Sean Joseph. No, didn't reaffirm, but is going to announce. He's going to make a signing day announcement on which school he will attend, despite being committed to Florida. And he's choosing between Florida and Alabama, but I don't think Alabama is going to take him, so I guess we'll get a second commitment from him. So this is the kind of thing that happens at this time of year. And but no, to kind of bring myself back off that tangent, I don't think Stove was ever seriously going to flip.
So another guy who reaffirmed his commitment earlier this week, I believe, maybe in talks to be a guest on the aforementioned commitment issues and National Signing Day show from Rivals.com, Marlon Character Jr. He had been looking at South Carolina, took an official to Virginia Tech. He reaffirmed his commitment, I believe. So Auburn kind of holds on to a couple guys they thought they might lose. And then Derek Brown, the work of Rodney Garner there has to be pretty impressive, the defensive line coach. We saw him play a part in getting Byron Cowart last year, the nation's #1 player. Some other guys they've got over the years, Carl Lawson, a 5-star out of the Atlanta area. Of course, Montravius Adams out of South Georgia. So he's done a terrific job. He continues to kind of be a guy that doesn't get the same type of love maybe, Ed Orgeron or somebody like that gets in terms of a D-line coach who can also recruit. But, it seems like year after year, dating back, Nick Fairley, even before that, they seem to have these big-time 5-star guys come through and not only excel there, but, pan out and move on to the next level. So right now my prediction is for Derek Brown to go to Auburn. I don't know what happened. I don't know, what the pitch was down there at Auburn. He's been there several times, but they were kind of the dark horse. I considered them behind a few schools, but I think it's going to be the old War Eagle for our boy Derek Brown.
Hey, moving on a little bit here. Do you remember 48 hours ago when I predicted that Keith Gavin would go to Alabama? that was a good time. Turns out he that story got released. Gavin ends up committing to Florida State 24 hours later. I just want to point out that in this business, and I told this story on the Ole Miss podcast, and I'm going to tell it again, and I won't say anything about the Gavin situation or what happened there, but a couple of years ago, I was on the phone with a head coach from a Pac-12 school, and I was reading Twitter at the same time. And he was telling me about this 4-star offensive lineman that was silently committed to his school that he worked at. And while this conversation is happening, he's like, we've got him. He's been silently committed for a month. The player in question tweets out his commitment to a Big Ten school. And I break the news to this coach in the middle of a sentence about how he's silently committed to his school. And he just hangs up on me to call the kid. So, it's real hard to predict these things sometimes. Gavin got away from me, but I think it's kind of a microcosm as to what might happen at Florida State. There is so much going on there with signing day approaching, guys they could get, might not get. Their class could have a very different feel by the time everything is said and done. They're the favorites to land Carlos Becker, the safety out of Florida. They've got the JUCO kid Kongbo up there with the 5 stars. They're in on Brian Burns, who they may land. Trayvon Mullen, the 4-star defensive back out of Coconut Creek, is considering them in LSU. Obviously they won't get all of these guys, but there's so many possibilities for what may or may not happen in Tallahassee that they're going to be one of those schools that's going to be a headache on our live show and on National Signing Day.
All right, so let's go through real quick. We'll do a little bit of rapid fire since you love doing predictions so much. People should know that Rob wrote that predictions file without any direction from our editors. He just went out on his own, decided, hey, I'm going to give the people what they want. Got to give them what they need. Give them the predictions. He writes it and then promptly gets 2 of them wrong.
Well, to be fair, the second one that I am going to get wrong is Keyshawn Young. And that's because he didn't have the USC offer at the time I wrote it. I mean, I can't predict that USC is going to come in and take him out on a visit. And then, I mean, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have picked Louisville. But, these things change so much. They're close to signing day that it's impossible to keep up almost. So we can do a rapid fire here if you want. I'm sure I'll miss all of them.
Okay. Trayvon Mullen.
I think he's going to LSU.
Okay, so 0 for 1 so far, Florida State. Carlos Becker, the defensive back from the Orlando area.
I think he's going to Florida State.
Okay, Jauan Williams. Now, you don't know this one from
Yeah, that's not my region. I'm not going to touch that one because I will definitely get that wrong.
Okay, I'm going to say, I'll make a pick on this one. I'm going to say no on Jauan Williams, and I'll explain that reasoning later
No,
on.
you got to say where he's going to land. You can't just say no. You can't take the field. This isn't that.
No, it's him or it's the field when it's someone who I'm not sure who else is in the mix there for his services. I remember. I'll do a little research on that while I ask you the next
What about
one.
this junior college jobber? Where do you got him going?
Job, boy, your Midwest dialect coming out there. The Jonathan Kongbo, I am picking him to go to Florida State, although I'm told he's told every school that is in his Final Four that he's coming there. So.
It's a real JUCO move. That's like page 1 of the junior college playbook.
Well, I don't cover JUCOs. I don't cover JUCOs on a day-to-day basis, but I was checking around today trying to see how the dominoes were going to fall. And, I heard word from USC that they were very confident. Then I heard from Tennessee that they were very confident. Then I heard from Ole Miss that they were very confident. And once again, Florida State, very confident. So, yeah.
Brian Burns is the next one on the list, and I'll pick him to Florida State. I think that will definitely. I think that's probably the most logical place for him. Although I don't feel 100% confident on that, I feel confident enough to say that I think that's my pick right now.
And the last one for me, Landon Dickerson. I do think he also ends up at Florida State, and I think that might affect Williams. I think if you have to choose between the two, it's him. If they can take both of them, they will. I could see maybe Georgia surprising with Jauan Williams, or I could see, especially if EJ Price goes to Auburn. So there's a lot of moving parts there at the offensive line position. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out for him. So he's the one that I'm sure Adam Friedman is having all kinds of shifts to his list.
But there's been some shifts on that list.
Trying to figure out where Jauan's going to end up.
Say that again.
I'm hearing the Atlanta Falcons are feeling very confident about this Kongbo character.
Okay, yeah. Hey, listen, Kongbo, I believe he went to I think he started his college career at Wyoming and then went there.
No,
and
he's a
figured
big
out
time. I've seen the film. He's a good player. I didn't mean to dismiss him by calling him a jobber, but I just kind of felt like saying that word.
I think he figured out he was really good and decided to go to JUCO because he wanted to go to play at a bigger school. So all props to him for exploring his options on that front. We usually close the show with rants and recommendations. We ranted a lot earlier about grumpy traditional media, which I always enjoy. So we can count that as our rant. Our recommendation: watch us, Rob. Give the people what they want. Tell them to watch our faces. And more importantly, we're going to get Nick in front of the camera, the sex appeal. And hopefully that brings in plenty of viewers from around the country.
Yeah, we'll even have him unbutton the top button on his shirt or something. I do have a quick recommendation that's not our awesome live show that'll be taking place on signing day, and I will make it quick. I am currently reading the book 59 and 84, which is kind of a pieced together biography of Old Hoss Rathburn's season in 1884, where he won 59 games. He pitched in 70-something complete games in this thing. I mean, just a different time. It's like a manly man's baseball book. The fielders aren't wearing gloves. It's bare knuckles. Everybody's getting concussions. He's pitching every day, almost dying of diseases that don't exist anymore. Lots of drinking and barroom antics and just everything that happened in and around baseball in 1884. It's a really interesting book, and I highly recommend anybody that's interested in baseball or bare knuckle brawling to pick it up and give it a read.
I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to save them because we got to get out of here. Nick's probably already mad at us. This is 40 minutes, but big shout to our boy M Deuce. You can find him on SoundCloud. You can find us all over the internet at Rivals Podcast. I'm at Rivals Woody on Twitter. Rob, of course, at Cassidy_Rob. If you want the story behind that, I think he's told it on several podcasts now.
Yeah, I think it's in episode 4 or something. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and biggest shout out to Korea again, and we'll see you guys on signing day. It should be fun.